All right, everybody, welcome, and we're glad to have you with us. We're doing a series of videos on the vision for our common life, and this is a document you probably heard in the first episode. President Mullen and I introduced it and just shared a little bit about what the vision is meant to achieve and why we're trying to choose this way of helping our community reach for certain ideals rather than ways that we've done it in the past. And so we assembled a group of students to just kind of talk about some of the not the details of the document so much as kind of the broad areas that this document is meant to kind of speak into. As you know, the document kind of encourages us to aspire to be a certain kind of community. So we want to talk about ways that we're already doing that well. And we also want to talk about ways that we're trying to do that well and still learning and growing into it. And so that's the purpose of our conversation here today. And so we're going to have, this is the second of 5 videos. So these next 4 will all involve students just talking about the specific, there are 4 kind of overriding areas. And you can find the document online if you go to houghton.edu, and you'll quite easily come find the vision for the common life. But we talk about Houghton as a rejoicing community, a gentle community, a community at peace, and a community that talks about praiseworthy things or things that matter. And so that's what's we're gonna shoot kind of one episode on each of those 4 main things. So this is something you'll be able to watch and learn a little more about what we're aiming at in that. So I'm gonna ask our panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves now, and we'll start with Amy.
Hi, my name is Amy Medozi. I'm a junior and a political science major, also the executive officer of diversity inclusion on the executive board of student government.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly Brazel. I'm a junior and I'm a writing and communication major. I'm the co-editor-in-chief of the Houghton Star school paper this year. I also play for the Houghton field hockey team.
Hello everybody, my name is Ryan. I'm a senior studying data and computer science with a minor in math. Love the technical stuff. And you'll see me working with Manners. I'm the past president there. And maybe you'll catch me running at the Field of Dreams. I've been doing a lot this semester.
And President Mullen.
Thanks, Dean Jordan. Yes, I'm President Mullen, and I think most of you know me, but I simply want to begin by thanking Amy and Molly and Ryan for being part of this. Part of whether this really does what we hope involves students really understanding and caring about this. So thank you so much again for being part of this conversation.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to have your involvement too. And of course, it's great to have President Mullen with us. Part of the story here is, of course, that both of us are alums of the college as well. And so we have stories about when the college has sort of succeeded in these things that we've always tried to have as part of our DNA, and also times when we haven't done it so well. And so it's good to be able to talk about those from 2 different eras that are different than the eras that the students are living now. So our first conversation is around Houghton as a rejoicing community. A community that worships together, rejoices, just kind of it combines the idea of joy and worship. And so would love to hear first from our group here, just what moments of rejoicing have you had at Houghton that have been really important for you? Like, are there specific times that you can remember, oh yes, that was a moment that just kind of characterized rejoicing here? So go ahead, jump in.
I think for me personally, one thing that really comes to mind is I have always been really involved with our spot performances. Ever since I was a freshman, I'm kind of known around campus as that girl who tap dances a lot and stuff. And at first it was kind of funny because we knew that dancing had like this, thing, but then it was tapping. So it was fun. And I think every time I've done that, and we've all been in that community all together in the chapel, and this year virtually, we've always just had a lot of energy and a lot of fun. And I've just always felt like I was really tied in. I would have people I didn't know coming up to me and saying like, oh, you did a great performance, or you were great, or the show was just like so much fun. And especially the spot we had this past spring was just such a good time. And I just love being able to have fun like that with the Houghton community. And those are just things that when I think of the good times I have here, that's what I always think of first.
Yeah. Thank you. Others of you?
Oh yeah, that's great. So kind of in my past, I was part of Mercy Seat. I was like a prayer leader on there, part of the cabinet and stuff too. And something that's really special to me about rejoicing are those spaces that are created, like Mercy Seat, like at Coin, you know, even just going to Houghton Wesleyan on Sunday and having that time of worship. Those have been, even off-campus Bible studies that certain professors lead. Those specific times have developed in me such a deep sense of God's love and God's care and presence with me here at Houghton, in the Houghton community specifically. And so I think it's been those times I've kind of, you know, you can have a lot of head knowledge, but when you enter a space like that, and really it's a space where you can encounter the presence of God, it transformed you to where, I mean, kind of like this document, as I was looking through it, it's kind of an aspirational sort of document. And it's those times of rejoicing where I can imagine and dream and be shaped inwardly to live that out more naturally rather than just kind of having all this head knowledge and stuff. And so that type of rejoicing is really special for me.
Thanks, Ryan.
I want to agree with Ryan, except in the fact that I receive my rejoicing not really in a more personal way, like from my friends. Like, I feel that love of God and that like wants to naturally live out the Christian ethic from like the love I receive from my friends. Like, I've made some really great friends over the past few years, and like having almost a home away from home and feeling so like at ease around people that really show godly love to you and make you feel so welcome is something that like I really cherish from being at Soul here, and like belonging to almost a community within a community that makes you feel so at peace. I feel like is something that I really like appreciate.
Yeah. Amy, I really appreciate that. I think very often when we talk about rejoicing in community, we immediately shift to like the big group. And that's something that is very common at small colleges and small churches, to think about what it means when everybody does something together. But there's also, right, in any group of any size, there's ways in which there's a special kind of rejoicing that's experienced within certain groups within the community too. And part of that's totally normal and really, really healthy. So yeah, thanks for bringing some light to that. President Mullen, any rejoicing moments you want to share? Or?
Well, I was going to say, I want to take my moment and ask a question, because I'm really fascinated by the way that the three students have identified three elements of this notion of celebrating God and God's gifts, because that's the subtitle in the document, you know, rejoicing, celebrating God and God's gifts. And Ryan has emphasized spaces, Molly's emphasized activities, and Amy's mentioned friends and relationships. So I just love the diversity of the way that you've mentioned the gifts that God opens us to in the community. And I know, Michael, you're planning to go back and ask about where they've met rejoicing in the classroom. Actually, my biggest moments of rejoicing are really with the students. And frankly, that's what has been so hard this semester, when we haven't been able to gather together as a body, because it really is Houghton as a place in which students are invited to come to a larger vision of their own lives and their own gifts that this place is all about. So that would be one of the moments when I most experience that sense of rejoicing, is seeing God's giftedness to our students.
No, it's good. For me, it's always, I'm very worship focused, as all of you know. So for me, the Houghton Gospel Choir was very active when I was a student, and singing with my friend Paul Watson the song "We're Blessed in the City, We're Blessed in the Field." Paul is, he's from Barbados, and he taught math here for a while. In fact, now he and his wife Jennifer have a child, I forget a son or daughter, who is considering coming to Houghton next year. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm really excited about imagining little Watsons running around our campus and getting to sing with them again too. So it's good to hear these kind of different perspectives on what it means to rejoice. It's of course very important that we learn to, you know, as the scripture enjoins us, to rejoice when others rejoice, and to enlarge our sense of what it means to rejoice, and to learn to see this in each other. So thanks for your responses to that. I'm wondering about the flip side. Like, I would guess that all of us would acknowledge that we don't do this perfectly, right? So there's a way in which like we don't necessarily walk around every day thinking about how joyful we are. So thoughts about how we could make joy kind of more ingrained in our community. Like what could we do? You know, Ryan pointed out this is an aspirational document. This is something we're reaching for. So how do we get there more? Like how do we open ourselves up to becoming a truly joyful community? Thoughts on that? I'll hear from students first. President Mullen, feel free to chime in when you want. But.
No, I'll wait. I want to hear from the students first. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to start this one off. So something I've noticed in myself and in others as an enemy of rejoicing in our community is, I mean, you're probably not surprised, the anxiety, and I see the burden of people because of their classes or their responsibilities. You know, we're at college. You know, one of our priorities is to do the work and do all of that. But I definitely see how it steals, you know, the joy that we can have, because we can become so focused and tunnel visioned on that we're not free and open to receiving and thinking about what we're thankful for and the gifts that maybe God has given us and stuff like that. And so, you know, maybe how could we become more of a rejoicing community in light of that? And as I've experienced this semester, you know, for me, it's had to been, you know, priority shifts, understanding what it means to work for the Lord, to where the Lord is the one I am pursuing, and my work is supplemental to that, or it's a part of that, but it's really not the drive of my, you know, my life, my semester.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And especially in like a time like this too, where so many things are different. And you know, you ask a friend like, hey, let's go to Coin. And they're like, oh, sorry, I have too much homework. That's often what happens. And that's what happens to me too. But I think another thing too is that in a community that's smaller, I think we also can tend to get stuck in our small groups. And then it's harder to reach out to more people and to be joyful with more people because we're so tied into the people we already have. So for example, you know, I'm involved in the sports team, so it would be really easy for me to just stay with my team, and that's okay. You know, it's good to have that team to go back to, and they're like a family to me. But it's also, I like to challenge myself to find more people to share my joy with and to share my time with. And I know that's really hard for a lot of other people on like sports teams, in honors groups, and just any kind of group like that. It can be really hard to find that will to separate and to just make more friendships and with different kinds of people. And I found that really rewarding in my experience. And I know it can be hard and people have different kinds of anxieties, and that happens. But I think that if we can find a way to somehow encourage that even more, to get people just out there and meeting new people and befriending new people, especially people that are different from them, it would be a really rewarding experience for all of us. And just that joy would be so abundant.
Yeah, thanks. Amy, anything to add on that, or?
Yeah, I agree with Molly with like kind of like spreading or widening our circle to like include more people, or maybe people that we wouldn't naturally think would fit with us. Like just loving and supporting everyone in a way that's like all inclusive instead of sticking into our like small circles, because I know that I definitely have fallen habit into just talking to people that I know and not trying to include everyone else, or like thinking of, oh, maybe I should look for a new friend today, because that kind of isolates us and doesn't really give us the mentality of inclusion of everyone else, and we kind of just get focused on how we're feeling or how my friends are feeling instead of how the broader group is feeling.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, Amy, because I think it is really important to, you know, as Molly said, I think the importance of widening the circle is really, really good. It's important for us to know, I don't know another way to say it other than to know kind of the weight of our footsteps when we take steps out. It's part of the reason why it's hard to get to know different people, is because different people are different than you, and and they, you know, they might like some of the things you like and not others, and they might find some of the things that you find normal, and they might find other things abnormal, and so it's hard to have those conversations, and it's important for us to know just kind of how how important it is to take those steps and how sensitively it needs to be done too. That's part of the reason why we tend to stick to smaller groups sometimes. So yeah, thanks for raising it. President Mullen, any more insights, or do you have another question for everyone?
Well,
That's fine
no,
too.
I'm gonna build on what Amy said and what you just said, Michael. And again, I love the wording that was put in this document. This idea of part of being rejoicing is reveling. I mean, that's such a strong word, partying. And I know partying has all kinds of other connotations, but the notion of reveling is reveling, or in the deepest sense, celebrating the good gifts of God. And so when Amy is talking about enlarging our circle of friends, it's also enlarging a sense of the gifts that God has given that other people see more clearly than we see. And part of the whole vision that I know, Michael, you and I have talked about so many times, is how Houghton is all about enlarging our sense of the good things in the world. So my comment here, which builds on what others have said, is this is one of the things that's so different about this approach to a community life document than the old approach, because the old approach is really, well, let's leave each other alone, and we certainly don't want to report on anybody doing something that's outside the community life expectation. This really flips everything around and says, how can we invite one another, not in a judgmental way, but how can we winsomely invite one another to see some gift of God that the others haven't seen? And I think this calls for an entirely new way of looking at being a community, because it's not in some preachy way, or, you know, Molly, you really need to go to COIN, or you were mentioning the difficulty of getting your friends to go. It's not in a preachy way, not in a judgmental way, but in that inviting, winsome way, to have students and faculty and staff think, wow, how can I help someone else see a bigger sense of the gifts that God has given? So I think that's really hard, Michael. I mean, when you say, where do we fail? We fail because we're so focused on, I don't want to be judgmental, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but we have to learn a whole new way of inviting one another to see God's gifts. Again, that doesn't sound judgmental, that doesn't sound preachy. That's hard work. And if we don't figure out a way to do that, this document isn't going to go anywhere.
No, you're right. And it's very, yeah, because we almost always interpret that kind of call to something better as a kind of, oh no, I'm not doing well enough as it is, and this person is, you know, and that's not the point.
Or we
But
associate it as a burden, not a gift. And see,
right.
the whole thing about this document is to call our community to see the gifts rather than what we need to avoid all the time. So anyway, I think that's what's going to be one of the big challenges of this new approach.
Yeah, good word. One more question, and then we'll say goodbye for this. I wondered about joy in the classroom. Like, is joy, Ryan kind of alluded to the fact that sometimes the classroom can seem like the opponent of joy. You know, as we're trying to pursue joy, it's hard, the classes get in the way. You know, both Jill and I teach really different sorts of things. And for me, joy in the classroom is always about getting a student who is learning about a bigger question that they didn't know was there before, and not necessarily finding the answer to that yet, but that they have discovered a new question. Whereas in math, there's elements of that, but there's also a joy Jill feels in sort of someone finally getting it right, you know? And so there's different ways of experiencing joy across disciplines, but I wondered just any moments where you've experienced joy in the classroom. So we can hear from the students first. That's kind of a scary question to ask, but, and then any closing thoughts from President Mullen, and we'll head out. But any thoughts from students on that? Looks like Amy.
I feel like I don't really feel joy in classrooms often, kind of like what Ryan was alluding to early, but mainly because classrooms to me are like places of academic advancement. It's not really have to do with like feelings and things like that. But I do know that I have experienced joy in sometimes in my past years, like when I'm having trouble in an assignment or a task or like something that's asked of me to do and I either don't feel comfortable or I don't feel I can do it, like maybe in the amount of time that they've given me. And like I've spoken to my professors and they're really like understanding and they give like reasonable accommodating compromises. And like I really appreciate when professors like listen to your circumstances and like, oh yeah, I understand, like you don't have to do it in so time, or I understand that you're uncomfortable doing so thing, maybe because of my culture or something. So like that really makes me appreciate them, and like I feel so happy when they say that, because sometimes it gets really stressful as a student.
Thanks, Amy. That's good. Ryan or Molly, any thoughts from you guys on this?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Amy that professors are a huge source of joy in the classrooms. Anybody who knows me knows that I, overall, I'm a pretty joyful person. And as a student, if you've ever had a class with me, I love to talk. Participation is a huge part of my classes, which was why last semester I struggled a little bit after we all went home because I wasn't getting that. I think I had one class that was synchronous Zoom, maybe two, and that was really hard for me because I like to interact with people. So I always have my greatest moments of joy when I'm interacting with the class, and maybe the class is also just as interactive as me and we're just bouncing back and forth. I know that when I did the London Honors Program and we got to do a lot of that with our colloquy smaller sessions, that was just so much fun to be able to pick apart at these pieces and talk. And I just always get such great joy of seeing people's ideas, and maybe I said something and then they carried it further and they took something new out of what I just said, and that just blows my mind. And it's just moments like those where you see like you're just interacting with other people and you're picking at each other. It's just like it brings me so much joy for that. So
I could not hear this question and not share about my amazing experience with Professor Who in computer sciences. Wow, at almost every class, I don't want to be absolute, but pretty much every class, the joy that he brings in teaching computer science, it shares his fascination with the topics, his excitement for us to learn, his focus on learning over just accomplishing tasks and doing homework. It is evident in every day when he teaches us, and he has given that to me. And so I see the beauty of God in computer science because I see the fascination that he shares with me. It's really special. If anyone has a chance to take classes with him, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Good word.
I just need to quick add on to that with the fact that for communication with Professor Gardy, I always feel so much joy in that classroom because he just loves communication so much. And I'm taking a class for the first time with Professor Huth in communication online. And even through the screen, I can tell how much joy is there. So I think the more that a professor is joyful and passionate about what they're teaching, the more joy we feel as students. And it's just so encouraging.
Thanks,
So I can't resist. I love the comments you all made. And it does seem to me that part of our hope at Houghton College is that students, while they're at Houghton, can go from learning or classroom experience as a burden, which is how I think everybody starts out. And again, if we think about the sequence of comments from Amy to Molly to Ryan, I think we all start out when we come to college thinking of learning as the burden, and somehow everything else is going to balance out. Whereas the hope is that by the time we leave Houghton, the learning has become part of the exhilaration that then we'll carry with us throughout the rest of our life, and not something like, oh, I'm so glad I never have to learn again after I get my diploma. And so I really do think that what Amy and Molly and Ryan have described is that progress from learning as something we must do, and the way professors help us with that, as Amy has said, to the place where we see the joy in them, to the point where that joy actually becomes part of our own lives. And so I mean, as I think about the gifts that we would want each of our students to acquire and take with them, it would be that place where they actually experience the kind of exhilaration, Ryan, that you've noted in Professor Who. And I've seen that in him as well. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Thanks so much for all your thoughts on this. This has been a good dialogue. And remember, this is just one of 4. So you can join us again next time. We're going to talk about gentleness then. But as for now, we'll wind up. Go in peace. Have a good day.